Thank you very much. And in our family, you hear people say we trimmed the Christmas tree, meaning we put the lights on it. I don't know what that means, and we don't say that in my family. In my family, we say crim, C-R-I-M-M, the Christmas tree, and this is why. I grew up in a little tiny town called Half Dollar, West Virginia. We had two streets in Half Dollar. One was called Main Street, and the other one was called, nah, that ain't Main Street. And so my buddy Skeeter and I, when we were teenagers, we were always looking for some kind of job. Now, there is no authentic Christmas tree. Generally, they are some sort of conifer. They might be fir, pine, Douglas, juniper, yew, cedar, cypress, spruce, sequoia, if you've got the room, and PVC. But those aren't your only choices either, because then there's cut your own, live, my favorite, just pick one. And then apparently we don't take ours down till after February 16th. And then there's also, of course, artificial Christmas trees. So we were always looking for jobs, me and my buddy Skeeter, and we had this guy in town. His name was Farmer Dedalius, and if you've heard of him, it's because, farmers are always looking for another way to make money. And one of the things that he did, he was famous for his corn mazes. Every Halloween, nowadays, if you want to have a corn maze, you can buy software to plug into your tractor so that it plants the corn so that it grows in the maze. But that's not how Farmer Dedalius did things. What he did was he would grow the corn, and when it got to the right height, he would take a machete and an idea. And he would go into the corn, and he wouldn't come out till the maze was done. And they were famous for counties around. And as he got older, as the dementia set in, and they got more interesting. The third to last one was just a circle. The second to last one, there was no way out. And the last one just went a quarter mile through the cornfield and then dropped off a cliff into Skitter Creek. But he also had a Christmas tree farm. And after Farmer Dedalius bought the farm, the second time, if you see what I'm saying there, none of his kids wanted to take care of the farm, so they all moved away. They still owned the land, but they'd all moved away. And so Skeeter and I thought that maybe we could take over the Christmas tree farm. Now, we knew Farmer Dedalius' youngest son. He was older than us, but we'd been in the Boy Scouts together. His name, of course, was Icarus, and most people called him Chris, but his good friends could call him Ick. And he had gone off to Alaska to work the fishing boats, because if your name is Icarus, you want to go to the land of the midnight sun. And so we wrote him a letter. We said, "Dear Ick, can we sell the trees on your family Christmas tree farm? Sincerely, Skeeter and Bill." And he wrote back, a couple weeks later, we got a letter that said, "Dear Skeet and Bill, sure, sincerely, Ick." So we went out to the farm that summer, and we cleared out all the grasses and the weeds that had grown in between the trees and under the trees, and we cleared the dirt road that led out to the tree farm. And then later that year, we put up signs, the Dedalius Christmas Tree Farm opened again, and we really didn't have much business at all. Almost nobody wanted to come out and cut their Christmas tree that year. And about a week after Christmas, we figured out why. We were driving around town, and there were just all these artificial Christmas trees that were thrown out for the trash to pick up, and we found out that the town next to us, there was a store there, and they had had a huge sale on artificial Christmas trees, but for whatever reason, people really weren't satisfied with them, so they lasted that one Christmas, and they threw them out. And me and Skeet and our friend Ferndale were driving around town in Skeet's pickup, and we were picking up all those artificial Christmas trees. And I was explaining to them, I said to them, there's really no authentic Christmas tree, as long as it's some kind of conifer, like a fir, pine, Douglas. You've heard this before, probably. You can say it along. Juniper, yew, cedar, cypress, spruce, sequoia, if you've got the room. Right, good timing. That was great. And PVC. I said, But you know, there have been artificial Christmas trees really since the beginning of Christmas trees. The Germans, who kind of invented the Christmas tree, they would take into their house, instead of a tree, they would just cut descending circles of wood that they would stack up on top of each other like a cone that represented a tree. And then they could put candles on that in like the 1500s because that was less likely to burn your house down. And then in the 17th century, there was a tree shortage in Germany, and so they were worried about deforestation, I was telling my friends, and so they just plucked goose feathers, and they dyed them green, and they glued them to sticks to represent a Christmas tree. And I said, as a matter of fact, what we think of as the artificial Christmas tree was actually invented in the Second World War because there was a tree shortage in England, and the Aldris toilet brush factory, someone there figured out that the bristles on the toilet brushes looked a lot like the bristles on a tree, and so they dyed them green, and they made what we think of as artificial Christmas trees. I said, but you can trace it back even further than that. Because what is a Christmas tree made out of? An artificial? It's made out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which is, polymers. And so what is a polymer? That's lots of mers, so a single mer. Yeah, you guys are on top of this. So, the wise men, for those of you that didn't get it the first time, brought frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Right, so you can trace artificial Christmas trees all the way back to the birth of Christ. I said, that's why I call them Christmas artificial trees, right? You have authentic trees and then Christmas artificial trees. And my friend Ferndale said, only you would say that. And so we took all of those trees out to the Dedalius farm, and we piled them up beside the barn, and then we went to the football field. They had taken off the football artificial turf because they were going to put new football artificial turf down, and so we took the old roll, and we took that turf and put it out by the barn. And the next spring, the three of us went out, and we cleared an area, and we rolled out the football artificial turf, and Fern said, why are we doing this? And I said, oh, because Christmas artificial trees grow better on artificial turf. And so we took just pieces of the Christmas artificial trees, just like a branch or maybe the top, and we just stuck them in nice rows. We made a Christmas artificial tree orchard out by the road, and we changed the sign so it said Dedalius Authentic Christmas Tree and Christmas Artificial Tree Farm. And then because we were growing artificial trees, and the Amazon, not the store, but the place that is in South America, that's called the lungs of the world, right? So we put the artificial lungs of the world. Someday that joke's going to be funny to someone besides me. Anyway, then what we would do is every week we'd go out there and we'd just add to our Christmas artificial trees so they just get a little taller, a little taller, a little taller. Now, a Christmas authentic tree takes like 7 years to grow. So you can watch it grow, but it's not very interesting. A Christmas artificial tree, we could grow those as big as we wanted as rapidly as possible. And so people started to drive by. They'd drive by once a week, every 10 days to see how our orchard was growing. And then they'd come out in the summer and they'd have picnics underneath our Christmas artificial trees. One couple, they got engaged under that tree. And then they pre-bought that tree. And the tree lasted way longer than the marriage. But we learned from that people started to have their favorite tree, and so you could come out and buy your tree in like July, and we had like a Build-A-Bear kind of thing going on. You could build your tree any way you wanted to build your tree, and people were buying the trees, pre-buying them, they were renting them. You could bring them back afterwards and replant them so that you didn't have to store them. And so by like a week after Thanksgiving, we had very, very few Christmas artificial trees left. And Skeet and I were at the orchard doing some work, and Lillian Krim drove in her car. She got out of her car. Now, Lillian Krim was that lady in town who she loved plastic. She was that lady who had the plastic runners so you knew where to walk in her house. And all of her furniture was covered in plastic. She had vinyl dining room chairs, and then she had a real tablecloth made out of cloth on her table. But over that, she had a vinyl tablecloth. She got out of the car, she had on a plastic raincoat, plastic rain boots, a plastic rain bonnet on her plastic wig. She was the first person in town to have a credit card. And she said, I want you boys to assemble me a Christmas artificial tree. And we said, yes, ma'am. And she said, and I want you to put lights on it. And I said, well, ma'am, that's not a service we offer. And she said, well, all right. I got to pick up some things on the way home then. So I want you to make me a 30-foot Christmas artificial tree. I want a triple trunk, reinforced 30-foot Christmas artificial tree. So we built this monster 30-foot tree with this tremendous trunk. And she said, tie it to the top of the car, and I want you boys to come home with me so you can take it off the car and set it up. I know that's not a service you offer, but I'll compensate you for that. I'll bring you back out here. And we said, yes, ma'am. So we assembled this massive tree, and then we tied it on top of her car. She had a Chevy Chevette. So the Christmas artificial tree stuck out about 10 feet in front of that car. And we got in the car, and Skeet and I had to cinch our seatbelts tight. Not so much out of safety, but because the seats were covered in plastic, and we were just going to slide right down into the footwells. And Lillian Krim, she was one of those ladies. She had been born poor in a coal mining camp in West Virginia, and she'd been in the Depression, and she'd lived through World War II. So Skeeter and I had had more calcium in the first 3 years of our lives than she had had in the first 20 years of her life. And as a result, at some point, she had been a normal-sized human being. But now, she was one of those people that when she drove, she could only see out through the bottom of the steering wheel. So she couldn't see any oncoming traffic except jets flying into Dulles, you know what I'm saying? And so we're going down Saturday Sunday Road, which is this windy, curvy mountain road. Sometimes there's a drop-off on this side and a cliff on this side. You come around the curve, there's a drop-off on this side, a cliff on this side. It's difficult to see traffic, especially if you can only see 20 degrees above the hood of the car. And so she's doing pretty good, but she came around a really sharp curve, and she was headed straight. There was a split rail fence in somebody's front yard. She was headed straight for that. And I said, Miss Krim. She said, shut up, boy, I know what I'm doing. And she drove straight on until the tip of that 30-foot reinforced Christmas artificial tree went underneath the lights that were strung along that split rail fence. And when they had a good grip, she jerked the car like this. She pulled off the whole strand of lights, got about 50 yards of extension cord as well. And on the way home, she divested 8 fences, 2 nativity scenes, and a gutter of their lights. And when we got to her house, she said, now take it off, take it inside, and plug it in for me. She said, but spin it around a couple of times so you can spread out the lights, you know. So when you plug it in, they're even. And that is why at our house we call it crimming the Christmas tree.